Good. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Staycation. Thank you for joining the Builder panel. First and foremost, want to thank the Alliance team for putting this event together and everybody that's taken time out of their day during these times. Today's panel is going to be all about getting ahead in home delivery, what keeps our panelists up at night, the biggest opportunities to make their lives and housing better. And then about halfway through, we'll jump through some questions and answers. But before we dive into this with these panelists, I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Brek Goin. I'll be facilitating today's Builder panel. Very short background on me. I grew up in the industry with my father doing drywall. After college, got into the social media world and construction, grew the largest building related community online. And then most recently co-founded a company called Hammr, where we empower field workers and the next generation. I'm going to take this opportunity to turn this over to Rebecca and have you start the introductions.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Rebecca McAdoo. I'm the division president at Garman Homes in Cary, North Carolina. I started my career with Centex Homes many years ago and transitioned to Ashton Woods, and now am the leader at Garman Homes. Certainly grateful to be here and excited to be a part of the panel with you all.
Carlos, you want to go?
Sure thing. Carlos Salcedo, I'm with View Homes. Started my career 40 years ago in production framing. Worked through production, custom homes, entered mass production, working underneath home builders such as Pulte and Dow Webb. Transitioned into the front office, purchasing and running construction, and now I'm the vice president of purchasing at View Homes.
And Chuck, you're up next.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Chuck Chippero. I have been with Pulte Group, been with Pulte for just shy of 20 years. Prior to that, I worked in automotive. My thought process coming over to home building was to bring industrial construction ideas to Pulte Homes. I spent the first 7 years of my career building factories for Pulte and really bringing Pulte Home Sciences out of the ground, and then working on some other vertical integration endeavors. After the Great Recession that many of you still may remember, I moved over to run our supply chain activity for the company starting in 2010, and was doing that role right up until recently, where my focus is now shifted exclusively on innovation, although it's innovation with a focus on innovating the supply chain.
Awesome, great introductions. Obviously, given the current times with COVID-19 and everything, the whole epidemic may have given us a big curveball and everything. So I think the best opportunity for us, given the current state of the industry and the epidemic, whether it's directly related to COVID-19 or not, I think a really awesome starting point for us today and the panel would be to ask, you know, what are some of your guys' biggest priorities and the biggest opportunities that you're seeing for innovation in this year? And I think even touching on bleeding over from 2019 going into 2020, how has that kind of impacted some of your plans?
I'll start. You know, I think, wow, look at that.
I love that.
Thanks, Brek. You know, I think the biggest opportunity as we navigated into 2020 was certainly a focus on attainability and what attainability means in our submarket and to our buyers, things that are important to our people that are buying our homes, and what's authentic to them, and how does it feel and how does it live? And that is still a major focus. You know, I think ultimately the way that people live and view a home now is changing, and ultimately understanding what that change means is for us to ask good questions and be nimble and make sure that we are make sure that we're flexible and understanding what our consumers want.
I agree with Rebecca. Somebody mentioned earlier today, understanding and listening to what the consumer wants versus us telling them and going after the sale immediately. I think in today's environment, we're learning that great listening skills gets us a little bit further than trying to be a salesperson. So I totally agree with Rebecca on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, Carlos. John, I think Cecilian this morning said that, the reg cards need to go away. We need to be asking lifestyle questions in order for us to understand the consumer.
For us at Pulte, our focus has been on continuing our process of consumer-inspired floor plan development, bringing our home buyers into the process early, being part of our design process. Internally, we call that common plan management, where the idea is to take some of these, very excellent plans and deploy them in multiple communities, crossing as many geographies as possible. And so we find this as an opportunity to, leverage a good design, an efficient design, but also really listening to the consumer. So a lot of our focus has shifted towards paying special attention to the entry-level buyer and what we can do to make sure that we're as affordable as possible. So that's been a key focus. And in fact, most of our innovation work is really around that very objective.
Yeah, you guys bring up some good points, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of segue into, given how the current epidemic is either affecting our thinking around tomorrow's opportunity and our future in the next 6 to 12 months. I'm kind of curious to ask because Chuck, you brought up the consumer engagement, especially at the entry level, and the whole bringing designs in house and everything. I mean, I've had multiple conversations where, now we're talking about consumer engagement around like virtual reality or viewing plans online and how those are changing. Maybe, we've heard from an earlier session about remote work, and if that's 2 family members in the house instead of just 1 now, and designing for that. And so I'm curious to ask you guys, what kind of trends are currently impacting the future of home delivering, and which ones do you think are staying, and which ones do you plan to explore here in the future?
I think going back to what home means to everyone is an individual experience, but to your point, Brek, we're all living in our homes very differently these days. Kids, pets, 2 people working from home, and there's how we are living now has been very much, it's changed. And we need to understand what's important as it relates to how people live and the safety in their homes. What does that mean? What is safety? How can it be clean? How can we allow a space that empowers people and makes people feel comfortable to self-quarantine? And what does it look like? Mm-hmm. Is it additional bathrooms? Is it a vestibule? Is it washer and dryers in the garage so that they can take everything off before they come into the house? I mean, there are multiple ways I think that our buyers are going to ask or expect, or hopefully, we can innovate and share with them different ways to redesign a home so that, if something like this does occur again, that we're comfortable quarantining our husband, or comfortable, if we're living, our CEO, Elena Money Garman, her mother lives with her. She's 8 years old. That's her home lives differently for her now. I have 3 kids and 2 dogs and a husband, that is a police officer. How we live in our home is different than how we lived in our home 2 months ago. So I think, would be remiss not to really dive into the pain points of what people feel right now. Levels of dissatisfaction in their home and what's not working for them will, I believe, transition the way we design and sell homes.
Yeah, I'll give a real world example. During this crisis, I've talked with many family members, all asking about what they need to do in order to get Wi-Fi coverage throughout their whole house, because they were, trying to social distance, but also be able to work in different spaces. Unfortunately, a couple of years ago in our company, we made sure that all our new homes had a robust backbone for a good, strong Wi-Fi coverage throughout the home. And, back then it was debatable whether or not consumers would really value that. But today it's crystal clear that those are table stakes.
I want to stay on this topic a little bit more. Rebecca, you kind of brought up the living differently, and people are kind of dissatisfied in their current living situation and everything. And we just had a question come in from the Q&A. And I think it's really relevant to what you're saying right now, but it's, which home features do you see home buyers deeming as an integral part of a healthy home? You talk a lot about living differently. Does that mean more customization of the home, or what do you think that means to you guys?
I think that means taking advantage of the advancements that we've had in the industry. Working with the purchasing departments that we have, there are a lot of companies that have come up with new ways of coatings, or even, there's companies out there that have are offering these antibacterial or antimicrobial coatings on the fixtures that they're offering, and then using that to maximize what we think the homeowner would appreciate, what their expectation is, because today, as opposed to 6 months ago, homeowners are pretty educated now when it comes to being clean. So we're not trying to sell something to somebody who doesn't know what's going on. They're pretty well educated, and we need to come to them with real items, not what was that old term they used to use in the old West, the guy who had the snake oil. It's got to be something sustainable, and like the millennials, they're smart now. So I don't know, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I agree with Carlos. I was reading an article that a friend shared with me by Elizabeth Yuko, and she was talking about how the modern bathroom was developed alongside outbreaks of TB and influenza, and I think it was cholera. So history shows us that we can expect change. And I think they were saying that the amount of bathrooms, or she shared that the amount of bathrooms had doubled. There's just, to Carlos's point, is what is clean? Is it the materials we're putting in our home? Is it the location of sinks? Is it, the green features that we have in our homes? What do you deem clean? They talk about things that are really hard to find right now, like toilet paper and paper towel. How do we live through this to see the other side? And is there options? And are we going to see different options that will solve the dilemma of having or not having paper towel and toilet paper? I think we will. I think we will.
Good point.
Chuck, do you have any thoughts around this?
I just echo kind of the same, inputs that everybody's mentioned here on the panel. And, things are changing. They're always changing. They're always looking different. And that's why when we do our common plan management design process, we go through a pretty rapid refresh cycle, because, the plans that were great, 2.5 years ago or 2 years ago, it's great today. So constant refresh and adaptation is required.
Yeah. I mean, given the current state, even new trends, we were talking about bathroom advancements and everything. What are some of the most innovative things you guys are trying to integrate into your business now to kind of deliver on this consumer engagement that's absolutely necessary with the changing times? What's some of the things that you guys are doing right now?
I'll take that. I think TST this morning, she was the moderator, first thing, said that human experiences matter more. And I think now, amongst everything that we've talked about, it's understanding our buyers, who's purchased our homes, how they're living in our homes. One of the social platforms that we've utilized is reaching out to to buyers that we've built homes for in the past several years, and how they're self-quarantining. How are they living in their home right now, and share with us. We've reached out to buyers that are in the process of building homes with us. What are you most excited about our houses? I think backing into understanding what is working for them and what is not. And so having options like built-ins for your children that are all being homeschooled right now, which is a challenge. Having dual offices, having that option. We would have never put 2 studies as an option in a house. Well, now I bet we see them. We would have never put stackable washer and dryers in a garage. I bet we will now. Sinks in the garages will come back. The vestibules, which were kind of taken over by a tech center, will now, I think, come back to a drop zone for, leaving your Amazon packages there, or any packages that are there as you enter into the home, or and I think those sorts of things, we will see an insurgence of options chosen that right now are a pain point for people.
Yeah, as people have been, basically, stuck in their homes, it kind of brings up an interesting question with regards to those folks that have decided to live in a tiny house or in very, very small spaces. So it'd be interesting to see what perspectives change, as people have had the opportunity to be holed up for many weeks.
Yeah, I find something really interesting right now, given the COVID-19 and the housing shortage. One of the questions that popped up in the chat was, with the housing shortage, are you trying to have more repeatability and less options for the consumer? Yet we're also kind of talking about, all of us have briefly brought up the living differently. Now, how does that kind of create a good parallel between the housing shortage and whether that's less options, or do consumers now need more options? So how are you guys planning on adjusting with that?
Well, I'll take that one. What we've focused on is looking at what are smart option packages. That includes structural options as well. So if you can get a good read on what the consumer is looking at and what interests them, it's possible to package those options, which can allow you to reduce your option complexity. Because there's no doubt that option complexity, drives inefficiency and cost. Although it provides, a lot of choice for consumers, there are ways to meet the consumer's needs by doing smart packaging. Similar to those folks that buy automobiles, right? You're buying packages, that are researched to the point where they know that most consumers, are interested in those packages. So we have been doing quite a bit of work in that area, and being able to extract efficiency from doing that type of work.
Yeah, we're doing something very similar to what Chuck is doing over at Pulte, where we're also following, the automobile industry has done really, really well in transitioning from individual options to packaging, and where you're getting a good car, a better car, and a really great car, but it's all the same car, but you're packaging the options into what they what the consumers want or what they feel they need, and not cheating anyone out. One great example, a few years ago, only the best upgrade had a video screen on your car. Today, all vehicles mostly have that video screen, and the only option is the size of the screen. So that's become the option, is the level of the option, and not so much having it or not having it. And that's what kind of where we're headed in, is simplifying the options. But again, like Chuck said, doing the research to see what the consumers want.
Yeah, I'll mirror both what Carlos and Chuck have shared. And ultimately, I think every company suffers from sitting in a room and saying, I think we need this. And it's typically from a personal point of view. And, you know, we think it's the best idea ever. And then it goes to market and no one assimilates with it. So you have to start with the consumer. And none of us want 1,000 options that nobody is picking. So your best options are the ones that assimilate with your buyers, that, you know, can cross different demographics, and you've got options that are specific to people's life choices.
Yeah, I mean, it seems kind of like, you know, some of the most challenging thing is integrating the new trends and everything and keeping all of your partners on the same playing field and everything. And I'm kind of curious to ask, you know, whether it's trades, architects, manufacturers, tech providers, finance, and even insurance, how can you leverage these partners to make your life a little bit easier given the current circumstances and your guys' outlook on the future? How do you see them playing like a very integral part of growing with you guys?
I'll start. I mean, I think it all starts from us. Communication has to be consistent, and it can't be spotty. It has to be clear and concise, and the vision has to be clear and concise, and the understanding of, you know, how we're operating business and our expectations. And we can't expect that of anyone unless we are leading that. And then, you know, I think ultimately from there, if you lead by example and set the right expectation, that your partners fall in line. And if they don't, then that's a different story. But setting the right expectations, making sure that visibility into our plan, sales starts and closings, making sure that we are being very transparent with our numbers so that they're staffed accordingly and that they are prepared with our volume. And then ultimately, you know, if we're not innovating, we can't expect them to innovate. So, you know, again, it starts with us.
Yeah, I second that. You know, more specific example, what we have found working with our partners is to involve them in the product design process very early on, and to make sure that it's really an integrated process, so that you know, they can provide their input, you know, optimize their opportunity with us, and that even includes option packaging. It's amazing, or I think what's important with a partner is to make sure it's a win-win, and that, you know, it doesn't, all the value doesn't go to one side or the other. So that partnership's very important, and it comes right down to how you operate as well. You know, if you can make sure that you can, you know, level your schedule, you can make sure your job site's ready, you can make sure your communication is clear with regards to expectations of the trade, you can become the builder of choice, and that's what we strive to do.
Rebecca, you've, Carlos, did you have something?
Yeah, just to go on top of what my two partners have said, you know, the current state of this COVID-19 and then the slowing down of our industry has made our situation different than the past. In the past, when we had to slow down, there was an adversarial feeling between trades and builders as to, pricing. And when the economy came back, that adversarial reversed, where now the trades were in demand and they could control the price. And what this has done, and to us over at View Homes, is it's humanized it, where now our partners, our trade partners, our architects, our mortgage companies, we're all talking to each other as partners, as humans, understanding when they're shorthanded or they're working from home, and there's a bigger understanding that we're having today, and being able to listen to them as well as listening to our buyers is really helping us get through this.
I want to stay on one point really quick before we jump into kind of the option packaging that you guys are talking about. But a lot of that has been brought up is communication. Rebecca, we've chatted previously, and I was pretty astonished to hear that you said 93% of your communication is all done digitally now. Is that, like, how has that impacted your business? And now is it it's near 100% right now, but I'm curious to see kind of how that you plan on evolving that, whether it's consumer engagement, getting in front of these right customers and getting them familiar with your business, and how you plan to take that a step further.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about communication is amongst each other, and that we say that 93% of what we say is not what we say. It's 93% is nonverbal, which, if you take the essence of interacting with someone face to face, right now I have no idea what the people on the other end of this call are doing. Are they on their phone? Are they yawning? Are they engaged? Are they bored? I have no idea, which is really challenging. And so what we've tasked our team, who's amazing, and again, it all starts with our people, is to be cognizant of your presence. I mean, if 93% is what you're not saying, then you better figure out how to communicate with people now via FaceTime, via Zoom. And it's such an important component of communication that we have to figure it out. And so, yes, I'll tell you, we have had so many great success stories of the people that are our front line, our sales folks, our builders, who are constantly, they're doing walkthroughs via FaceTime, they're contracts via Zoom or FaceTime. This is different. This is a different way of conducting business. And, I think we were sharing the other day, Brek, that the nimbleness of this is pretty incredible, because, if you've got buyers from out of state, now you can walk them through your models. You can do everything virtually. They can sign their contract. We're doing virtual design appointments. I mean, the possibilities are endless. It's pretty impressive.
Chuck or Carlos, would you like to add?
Well, I would like to add a specific example. Just looking at a couple of the questions, and one of the questions that was asked, what can we do working with partners to, make sure that there's a win-win in some of the innovation projects we're working on. For some time now, we've been working with industry partners to bring a new HVAC supply solution to industry. Many of you are aware of it. It's called RIA. It's a small duct delivery system that allows you to bring your whole HVAC system inside conditioned space. The product will clearly be a cost reduction for the industry, but what it does for the trade, it allows the trade to actually do more houses much, much faster, and not have to deal with mastic and tape and a very sloppy process. In addition to that, it provides a much higher performance level to improve indoor air quality and performance. So this is an example where I think there's a lot of stakeholders that stand a chance to gain from this specific example of innovation.
Yeah, I want to shift gears a little bit and go through some of the questions in here. Rebecca, it obviously seems like some people are not bored, some are doing jumping jacks.
Good.
And another
love
person has
it.
commented that they're not bored. So that's a great sign.
Good.
I want to
Thank
shift
you.
gears and talk about, Chuck, you were talking about option packaging. Carlos, you were talking about different levels of vehicles, kind of like the automotive industry and everything. And the one of the questions that's come up in the chat that I'd like us to talk about is, can you guys speak to an increased need for ADUs as an option? And if yes, how can we work on zoning to accept these offerings?
Yeah, I don't know, Carlos, you want to take that one?
I'll let you have that one.
Yeah, it's not anything that we're focused on at this point. I think a lot of that activity is in California, although we're in California, we have no real active projects around ADUs, other than monitoring the activity and some of the interesting technologies that are trying to serve that demand right now.
Rebecca, do you have any point?
Brek, I missed my computer fuzzed out. Can you
I'll run the question
rephrase
back,
the question?
yeah.
Thank you.
Can you speak on the increased need for ADUs as an option? And if yes, how can we work on zoning to accept these offerings?
Ooh, that's a good question. We are actually in a project now where we are attempting to design ADUs, and how do we get an adoption it's a tough question, Brek. I do feel like the more challenging it is to achieve attainability, the more we will have the need to have them. And ultimately, we need people to trailblaze, and we need someone to believe in it, and we need the opportunity to show that it's needed, and people will pay for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because we really need that with the ADUs. I mean, me located in San Francisco, affordable housing is very, very far away from us. It almost feels like a moonshot at sometimes.
Sure.
And I think that's now needed more than ever. I mean, a previous session was just talking about, hey, how ADUs are going to be needed for maybe elderly family members that are going to be living in. Or an interesting point that I even saw was, some of the homeowners actually moving out of their McMansions and back into the ADUs and renting it out for a growing family. So it's definitely needed, but we're just waiting really on that trailblazer. Another question that has come in kind of around the plans and option management. Is there any current softwares you guys are using, business softwares, that are allowing roadblocks to the customer being able to express what they truly want to get out? And what is the impact level of the complexity of your team members?
Yeah, very good question. A difficult one to answer because there's so many different ways to approach it. What we've done, and I'll bring it down to kind of the frame shell, is for most of the homes that we build, we make sure that we provide lot-specific drawings, not because it's a requirement. We do it so that it's as a communication tool to all our trades, so they know specifically what structural options were selected on that given lot. And utilizing tools that do dynamic configuration, we're able to generate those lot specifics in a matter of minutes. Where, if you do it the old-fashioned way, it's time consuming and you would likely not do it. So I think there are some emerging technologies that utilize dynamic configuration that allow us to not only do a better job on drawings, but also dynamically configure a house from a bill of materials standpoint.
Yeah, I agree.
My company is a little bit we're transitioning away. Historically, we had done a lot of semi-custom without the ability or the technology to do lot-specific plans. And as most of you probably know, It's very difficult when you're not structured to do semi-custom items. It's very difficult for a true production builder to do those kind of things. So we're actually going in the opposite direction of minimizing footprint options, streamlining our options to where the selection of the option is timed best for the construction of the house. And so there's no late options. And everything is, for lack of a better way of saying it, it's put together smartly to be more efficient, and the emphasis is on completion and quality is the direction we're going in right now.
Okay. I support what Carlos is saying, because I'm seeing a lot of builders out there going down the same path of, I would call it, pretty extreme simplification, especially on the structurals. And we're doing the same on some of our product lineups, not on everything, because we serve a multitude of different consumer groups. But because of the affordability challenge, there is no doubt that there's a lot of builders out there that have shifted their product portfolio away from custom, type homes, therefore maybe not allowing as much personalization in order to gain the efficiency. It's certainly a balance. And with better digital tools, it's possible to find that intersect where we can accomplish both.
We actually have two brands. So we fly under Garman Homes, and then we have a fresh paint brand. And would love and encourage everyone on the call to look at our fresh paint website. The first page will say that we rage against builder beige. And it's unique and it's different. And they are homes that have curated design packages whose names are, hashtag yes please, or lake life, or on the rocks. They're fun, they're engaging. The packages are, they have lives of their own, and people pick them at time of contract. There are no changes after contract at time of sale, and we have structural options as well, but there are no deviations to what we have on our plans for fresh paint. And it is very well received. It is a simple way to purchase a home that has high design without a lot of questions and time. But it goes back to, again, staying up with the trends, making sure that we are constantly reassessing what our buyers are picking and what's important to them. And it's fun. Our exteriors for fresh paint are all named after children of people that work at the organization. I mean, it can be fun, and it can be cheeky and enjoyable. And then on the flip side of fresh paint, we have our Garman brand, and people go to a studio to select their options. But they are, and I think Carlos had mentioned that it's very challenging when you offer a level of complexity. So we allow buyers to have 3 wishes, and they are not, the only rule of the wishes is you cannot have more wishes. You cannot wish for more wishes, but you can have 3. And it allows for people to have that level of customization amid a design studio experience.
I want to stay on this topic really quick. Did somebody have something?
No, please go ahead, Brek. When you get an opportunity, there's a few things from the community we'd like to throw out there, but please continue on the path you're on. Yeah.
I'm going to touch on 2 back-to-back questions that's come on. They're both around kind of the virtual design plan, the virtual environment. And 2 of the questions are, how has your experience been with regards to finalizing selections in a virtual environment? And maybe building on that question too, is, do you foresee working with home buyers via online meetings and then even virtual reality and AR home models to do virtual walkthroughs? So how are those 2 coming into play for you guys to kind of streamline that process?
Well, I'll start by saying part of our plan development process involves using virtual reality tools with selected folks that are in the consumer group that we test, and they use those tools and provide very valid feedback. We use those same tools to do kind of a virtual first build as well. which can save us certainly time and money. With regards to the selling side, though, we're still using some tools that have been out there a while, Envision, et cetera. And so I would say in that space is still a big opportunity for us from the standpoint of, selling virtually.
We are in the process of going through a completely virtual design studio appointment. It's one of our first from start to finish. And it has been different. I mean, it has certainly been challenging. You think of, you are in a museum of amazing things that you want to feel and touch and share, to you're behind a computer screen, and there's endless amounts of context on the internet, and you're trying to describe a floor sample virtually. That's not easy. And so navigating that and making sure, I think it starts with expectation setting, allowing you and the buyer kind of a level of commitment and grace through it, right? This is new for all of us. And then ultimately just, I know we've said it and we sound like a broken record, but listen to the consumer. This particular consumer, it's their fourth home buying, and they want what they want, and they have a lot of questions. And so what we're finding is, although it's flexible for them, it's a lot of behind the scenes work, because you're having to do so much more because you do not have all of the materials front and center and across from them. But it's doable, and it's a learning process. And like anything, we're already realizing things that we need in our playbook. We need catalogs, better catalogs, not just a catalog, something that's exciting and something that is purposeful and that people can look at and educate themselves. It's about educating the buyer and making sure that they're comfortable. So we'll let you know how it goes, but we're full in.
One of the things that we are doing, we recently switched gears in our product development, much like Chuck. All our plans are now being drawn in Revit with the idea that we are going to have an Oculus camera in every one of our models, so that we can have virtual walkthroughs on the models that we don't have modeled. So, because more times than not, I hear from the salespeople that we sell more of the model than anything else, because, well, basically the model's there and people like buying what they can touch. So being able to give them a virtual tour of every plan that we offer, we're thinking is going to get us one step closer to where we think the industry is going.
I want to dive into, Rebecca, did you have something you wanted to add?
I'm good. Go ahead, Brek.
I want to dive. No. I want to dive into one of the last questions before we close out with one of our last questions. But one of the comments in the chat was really interesting. Obviously, over the last quite a few years, we've really pushed for urbanization into larger cities, multifamily, so on and so forth. And one of the attendees brought up, given the COVID-19, speculating that it could cause big demographic shifts away from big cities like LA, New York, and these places with isolated homes. Do you really think, given the COVID-19, will change consumer demand for subdivisions and other traditional neighborhood designs for new homes? Do you think we're shifting towards that? Or, what are your thoughts overall on the urbanization aspect?
I'll give a short answer, no. I don't think it's going to be changing overall the way we come together as communities. We have seen, in the cities that we work in, that you have different people, and people who like to live alone are going to live alone, and those people like me that grew up in Los Angeles, concrete jungle, I need to be around people. So that's my short answer. I'm sure it's not the only answer.
I think you're right, Carlos. I mean, Brek's, your experience in San Francisco is very different from mine in Raleigh, North Carolina. You know, someone's experience in New York City is so much different than, you know, someone out in, you know, the middle of the country. I mean, they have experienced COVID-19 differently. It doesn't mean that maybe they'll look at things, you know, that maybe their demands or their requests for new things in homes, they may be similar, but we all have experienced this differently. And so I think we would be remiss to say that everyone's perspective will be different as a result.
Yeah, and I would add, we're not expecting major changes, although we are expecting maybe I'd call it accelerated migration from the north to the south. So we already got early indications of that. Now that's been going on for some time. We think this thing might actually accelerate that.
What are your guys' housing forecasts for the next 12 to 18 months? Bullish or bearish?
Do you have a crystal ball, Brek?
I wish I did. I wish I did.
Oh gosh. You know, I think coming out of this, I heard somebody say the other day, if you don't come out of this with version 2.0, you've missed out on an opportunity. And I think that is something that we, just as a company, are harvesting and making sure that we are, of course, watching every day what's going on in the economy. We want to be smart. We want to understand all of our sales starts and closings, because that's what we do. But behind the scenes of all of that, making sure that, you know, we still have to be engaging. We have a story to tell. We build houses, and there are people that need houses. Their family situation's changing. I think Chuck said, you know, people may be migrating from the Northeast down. I mean, there are multiple things that will continue to change. And the next 12 to 18 months, we are hopeful. We are hopeful. We are pausing on a few things right now. Pause is the word of the day, and probably the next few days. But we're hopeful, optimistic.
Yeah. Our view is, we've got a reasonable backlog. We want to make sure that we're moving forward and delivering those homes, to those customers we've made commitments to. In this environment, it's been more challenging, particularly in some, municipalities. We're still selling, but there's no doubt there'll be reduced volumes here in the short run. So it really comes down to, what does this recovery look like? Is it 12 months? Is it 18 months? And I don't think any of us know that answer yet.
So it seems like all of our panelists are pretty optimistic. I'm really curious to ask you guys, given the optimism and everything, what ultimately is keeping you guys up at night?
Well, I would say the same question. But first thing that keeps me up is, a lot of our focus has been making sure that our employees and our stakeholders are safe and healthy. That's been job one for all of us as leaders, really our top focus. But then, I think, like I mentioned, what does this recovery look like? A lot of us came out of the last recession. That was a long climb out of a hole. I think we're optimistic that this isn't going to look anything like that because of the underlying fundamentals, but it could make a much bigger difference, if it's 12 months versus 18 months, and I'm sure all of us want to, keep our associates on the job as much as possible. But, the reality is, I think a lot of builders are going to be, facing for a period of time some, lower production rates.
Yeah, I agree with Chuck. What keeps me up at night right now is having the experience of the last downturn and the amount of great people that we lost out of our industry, and hoping that this one does not get to that level where we start losing the talent that we had to I mean, it took us a while to get out of that downturn. We had to get new blood, train people, retrain. We were doing really good a couple of months ago, and you know, the fear of losing what we had, and you know, if it takes us another 5 years to get the talent back, that's going to be bad. That's what keeps me up.
I would mirror the same. People, safety of people, managing the day-to-day as best as humanly possible, controlling the things that you can control, which are a lot of things. And there's a lot of things we can't, but we have to be really good and very transparent and very focused on the things we can.
I think we have time for a couple last questions, but this is an audience question. You know, definitely during the last housing turn, many builders pulled out of the R&D and the innovation during that time and choosing to focus on land and internal cost saving measures. How and why will this time be different than the last?
Well, I'll answer that. You know, we're going to continue our focus from an R&D perspective. You know, recently we made a very significant investment in purchasing Innovative Construction Group. You know, a great company out of Jacksonville that is giving us some great opportunities to learn and improve our ability on delivering, you know, homes, high value homes, and doing it very efficiently. So we're pretty excited about that. So we've made that investment. We're going to continue leveraging our learning there, as well as working with our industry partners. I talked about the RIA technology. You know, all of us builders are still pushing forward to get pilots in to work on getting that commercialized in this calendar year. And I think most people perceive that this is not going to be as long as the previous recession. So I think that's one of the reasons why we'll continue, you know, investing.
Rebecca, do you have concluding thoughts?
Yes, I agree with Chuck. You know, I think this is different. We've gone into this different than we did the Great Recession. So, you know, I think there are a lot of muscles that we flexed during that time. There are a lot of things that we learned. There are a lot of people that rose out of the shadows that learned a lot and were really successful and learned a lot of new trades in that time. I think, you know, continuing on, making sure that we stay abreast of what our consumers want and need, it's vital. And if we stop doing that, then we stop doing what, at least for us, what we're in this for, which is the buyers.
Carlos, do you have concluding thoughts?
I'm just anxious to get a haircut.
Me too.
You're not cutting your hair yourself yet?
No.
Not taking that risk?
Looks great, Carlos. Looks great.
I cut my husband's over the weekend and he's got a little bald spot.
Oh, there you go.
Well, you know, it happens.
It grows back.
So thank you guys so much. On that note, I just want to give you a little peek at what the next session is because it's a little different. So great job from Rebecca and Brek and Carlos and Chuck, and great questions from you guys. If you've been to our live events before, you know usually we're sitting at round tables and having discussions with each other. We're going to do a virtual version of that now for the next session. So we've got 15 minutes before we do our think tanks. What will happen is the people in that top row, which includes Rebecca, and Rodney Hall from Rodney Hall Executive Search, and Deanna Moore from Basseni and Lagoni Architects, and Thomas Simpson from Digibuilt. Brek and Carlos will stay together like good buddies do. And they'll be joined by Tim Beckman from Simpson Strong Tie and Leisure Stecker from the Brewer Companies. And they're going to focus their conversation around labor. And then Chuck is going to be joined by Walker Harris and Diana Fissler and Michael Strohecker. Walker is Williams Robotics. Diana Fissler used to be Johns Manville, and she's now ADL Ventures, and she's running an interesting research project around industrialized construction with the DOE. And Mike Strohecker is with Hunter Panels. So what we'll do is when you come into the next session, you just follow the links as attendees like you normally would. And the good friends of ours on the VFairs end on the back are going to split everybody up randomly into groups with each of these crews. We're going to do discussions in the smaller groups for a little bit, and then magically we're going to come together as if we came together in the room to report out so that everybody can hear. Rodney will share what the design team talks about, Brek will share labor, and Diana will share industrialized construction. And then we're going to open up the discussion for everyone in the room. So if you've been to our events, you know if you don't speak, we will call on you. So we're going to do our best to call on you in that next session and get as many voices out as possible. But in the meantime, if you have other questions or you want to reach out to one of the speakers on here or from a prior session, or you want to connect with attendees, if you have any feedback for us, this is our first time doing this in this environment. Would love to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. From your experience today. Be sure to go to the lounge to connect with individuals, and then you can also go to the chat room to post your questions. You can access the chat room from the lobby. There's actually a little link toward the bottom left that says chat rooms on it. So we hope to see you guys back online at 3:15. And for you guys on the panel, a well-earned 15-minute break. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks.
All right, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.